The encryption algorithm I built took 11 years to perfect, and the man who stole it didn't even know what a hash function was. I remember the exact moment I realized something was wrong. It was a Tuesday in February, one of those grey Ottawa mornings where the cold comes through the walls no matter how high you turn the heat. I was in the server room on the 4th floor, running a diagnostic on the authentication layer I'd designed for the company's new cross-border payment system. My coffee was sitting on top of the rack, still hot. The door opened, and my manager, the VP of engineering, a guy I'd worked alongside for 6 years, walked in without making eye contact. That's how I knew. "Legal needs you in the boardroom," he said. "Now." He didn't wait for me to grab my coffee. I'd been at Northgate Financial Solutions since the company was 12 people in a leased office above a Shoppers Drug Mart in Kanata. We processed maybe 800 transactions a day back then. By the time I was escorted into that boardroom, we were handling over $4 billion in daily settlement volume across 6 provinces, and the core of the system doing that work, the zero-trust verification architecture I'd designed, patented, and spent a decade refining, was the reason the company was worth what it was worth. The patent was filed under my name in 2019, Canadian Intellectual Property Office, registration number, I still know by memory. The system had been licensed to Northgate under an agreement that gave them operational rights as long as I remained employed as Chief Security Architect. That clause was in Section 8B of my original contract. It was not ambiguous. My lawyer had made sure of that. The boardroom had floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the Radeau River. I'd always liked that view. The chairman's son-in-law was sitting at the head of the table. His name was Trent. He'd married the chairman's daughter 2 years earlier, done an MBA at Queen's, and spent most of his career managing a chain of outdoor equipment stores his family owned in the Maritimes. He was 34 years old. He had never worked in financial technology. He had never worked in technology at all. 3 months before that Tuesday, the chairman had quietly restructured the executive team and put Trent in charge of a new division called Strategic Digital Infrastructure, which, as far as anyone could tell, meant he got to sit in on meetings about things he didn't understand and ask questions that wasted everyone's time. He was smiling when I walked in. There were 2 people from legal sitting to his left, a woman from HR to his right, and my VP of engineering standing near the window with his arms crossed, looking at the river. "We're making some structural changes," Trent said. He had a way of speaking that made everything sound like a press release. "The board has decided to bring our IP portfolio fully in-house. Northgate will be assuming full ownership of all technology developed on company time using company resources." I sat down. "Did legal walk you through Section 8B of my employment agreement?" I asked. He glanced at the woman to his left. She shuffled some papers. "We've reviewed your contract," she said. "The company's position is that the technology was developed within the scope of your employment and that Northgate holds the underlying rights." I nodded slowly. "And the CIPO registration, the patent that's in my name? We're prepared to address that through a transfer of assignment," she said. I looked at Trent. He was still smiling, but it had gotten a little tighter around the edges. "Has anyone actually read the licensing clause?" I asked, not angry, genuinely curious. "We've read the full agreement," the lawyer said. "Then you know what happens to the license if I'm no longer employed here," I said. There was a pause. Trent smoothed his tie. "That's actually the other thing we wanted to discuss," he said. "We're restructuring the CSA role. Your position is being eliminated effective today. You'll receive a severance package in line with the Employment Standards Act, 8 weeks plus 1 week per year of service. 12 weeks total. For a system worth, at that point, somewhere between $140 and $160 million in licensing value. I'd had it independently appraised the previous spring, just to know." I didn't say anything for a moment. I looked at my VP by the window. He finally turned around, but he didn't look at me. He looked at a spot on the wall about 2 feet above my head. "Okay," I said. Trent relaxed. He probably thought that was the whole conversation. "One thing," I said, "the authentication system runs a continuous integrity check Every 72 hours, it pings an external verification node that confirms the operational license is active and that the registered IP owner has authorized continued use. If that ping doesn't go through, or if it detects an unauthorized assignment attempt, it flags the discrepancy to the node. The node is registered with CIP and with FINTRAC. Nobody said anything. "I'm telling you this now," I said, "because the last ping went out at 6 this morning. The next one goes out Thursday at 6. If I'm not employed here, and if there's a contested ownership transfer in the system, the flag is automatic. I don't have to do anything." The lawyer leaned forward. "Are you saying you've built some kind of, it's in the technical documentation," I said, "which your team had access to?" "I'm just making sure everyone understands the timeline." I picked up my visitor's badge. They'd already deactivated my access card, I found out later, and set it on the table. "Thank you for the severance offer," I said. "My lawyer will be in touch." I took the elevator down, walked out through the lobby, and stood in the parking lot for a minute, breathing cold air. Then I got in my car and drove home. My wife was in the kitchen when I walked in. She looked at my face and set down the mug she was holding. "What happened?" "Trent happened," I said. "She'd met him twice. She hadn't liked him either. Time." She pulled out a chair at the kitchen table and sat down across from me while I explained the whole thing, and when I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Does the system actually do what you told them it does?" she asked. "Every word," I said. She nodded. "Then we wait." I called my lawyer that evening. He was a senior partner at a firm on Elgin Street who'd helped me structure the original patent filing and the licensing agreement. When I explained what had happened, he was quiet for a long time. "They actually tried to push through an assignment transfer," he said. "That's what legal told me. Without your signature. Without my signature." He exhaled slowly. "Okay. Don't sign anything they send you. Don't respond to any contact from their legal team directly. And send me the severance offer as soon as you have it in writing." "What about Thursday?" I said. He knew what I meant. "Let the system do what you built it to do," he said. I didn't sleep well that night or the next. My wife kept telling me to eat something. I kept refreshing my email out of habit, then remembering I didn't have a work account anymore. On Wednesday afternoon, a courier showed up at the door with a registered envelope from Northgate's legal department. It was a release and assignment agreement asking me to sign over all rights to the authentication system in exchange for the 12-week severance. There was a deadline of 5 business days. I took a photo of it and sent it to my lawyer. He called me back in 20 minutes. "Don't touch it," he said. "They're trying to get this done before the flag goes out." "They know about Thursday," I said. "They know about Thursday. Thursday morning, I woke up at 5:45 and sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee watching the clock on the microwave. At 6:03, my phone buzzed. It was an automated notification from the verification node, a service I'd set up through a small tech firm in Waterloo that provided independent IP integrity monitoring. The message was 2 lines. It said the license authentication had failed. It said the discrepancy had been logged and forwarded to the registered contact at CIPO and flagged to FINTRAC as a potential unauthorized use of regulated financial technology. I put my phone down and drank the rest of my coffee. What happened next took about 10 days to fully unfold, but I'll tell you the shape of it. FINTRAC, the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Center of Canada, takes unauthorized use of registered financial security architecture seriously. When a flag comes in from a monitored IP node tied to a system processing billions in daily transaction volume, it doesn't sit in a queue. 2 days after Thursday, Northgate received a formal inquiry. The inquiry asked the company to demonstrate that it had legal authorization to continue operating the authentication layer currently flagged as IP contested. Northgate's legal team filed a response arguing that the system had been developed under an employment arrangement that gave the company ownership. CIPO disagreed. The patent was in my name. The licensing clause was explicit. There was no assignment agreement with my signature. The company had to take the system offline. Not all at once, not dramatically, but the authentication layer had to be suspended while the dispute was under review, which meant their cross-border payment processing went dark. which meant the settlement partners they'd signed contracts with, 3 of them were chartered banks, started making phone calls. I heard most of this secondhand from my old VP, who called me on a Thursday evening about a week and a half after I'd been let go. He sounded exhausted. "It's bad," he said. "I know," I said. "Did you know it would go this far?" I thought about that honestly. I knew what the clause said. I knew what the system did. I didn't know how fast FINTRAC would move. He was quiet for a moment. "Trent is telling the board he wasn't properly briefed. Was he?" Another pause. "There were memos. There were always memos. That was the thing about building critical infrastructure. You documented everything, not because you were planning for this, but because documentation was how you kept systems from failing. Every technical decision I'd made over 11 years had a paper trail. Every risk I'd flagged about the ownership structure had been put in writing. My VP knew that. Their legal team knew that. Trent apparently had not read the memos. My lawyer sent a formal demand letter on the 14th day. It laid out the licensing violation, the unauthorized assignment attempt, and the operational damages caused by the system going offline. It included an offer to resolve the matter through a negotiated licensing arrangement that would allow Northgate to resume operations. The chairman called me directly that weekend. His daughter's husband had put him in this position, and he was not happy about it. He was polite on the phone, the way men get when they're embarrassed, and trying not to show it. He asked if there was a way to resolve this that worked for everyone. "There's a way to resolve this that's fair," I said. We settled 3 weeks later. I won't give you all the numbers, but the new licensing agreement was structured very differently from the original. It included a 10-year term with quarterly payments indexed to transaction volume, a seat on the technical advisory board, and a provision that any future ownership questions would go to binding arbitration with an independent IP panel before any employment action could be taken. My lawyer was pleased. I was pleased. Trent was quietly moved back to managing the outdoor equipment stores. I heard through someone who still worked there that the board had been told he hadn't been adequately prepared for the complexity of the role. That was a generous way to put it. What actually happened was that a man who had never written a line of code, never filed a patent, never built anything more technically complex than a quarterly sales report, had decided he understood a system better than the person who spent 11 years designing it, because he had a title and a family connection and the casual certainty that comes from never having been seriously wrong about anything important before. That certainty is expensive when it breaks. I think about that morning in the boardroom sometimes. The way Trent smiled when he said my position was being eliminated. The way my VP stood at the window and looked at the wall instead of at me. The way the lawyer said they'd reviewed my full agreement, when what she meant was they'd read it but decided it didn't apply to them. The thing about building a security system is that you have to think like someone who's trying to break it. You have to anticipate every point of failure, every assumption someone might make, every place where confidence outruns competence. I'd been doing that for 11 years. The clause in my contract wasn't a trap I set for anyone. It was documentation of a real risk, the risk that someone would try to take the system without understanding what held it together. Some things can't be transferred without the person who built them. That's not a legal technicality. It's just true. My wife and I went to Prince Edward Island that summer. We rented a house near Cavendish for 2 weeks and spent most of it doing nothing in particular. Walking on the beach, eating too much seafood, sitting on the porch after dark listening to the water. One evening she asked me if I felt vindicated. I thought about it. "I feel like the documentation held," I said. She laughed. "That's the most you thing you've ever said." She wasn't wrong. I started a consulting practice the following autumn, working with financial institutions across Ontario and Quebec on security architecture for digital payment systems. The work was good. The clients were serious people who asked good questions and read the documentation before the meetings. The coffee machine in my home office was one I'd chosen myself, and it was excellent. Every patent on the wall of that office had my name on it. That part didn't change. That part was never really in question. The only thing that had ever been in question was whether someone with less to lose than me would figure that out before the clock ran out on Thursday morning. They didn't.